25 men, 1 woman, a single night to prove everything. Deep in ancient Rome's shadows, in a cramped, smoke-filled room within the city's most infamous quarter, something unthinkable was happening. The Empress of the world's greatest empire had issued a challenge to Rome's most celebrated prostitute. Who could satisfy more men before dawn broke over the city? No money changed hands. Status meant nothing here. This was pure competition, stripped of everything but raw ambition. Her name was Valeria Messalina. During daylight hours, she ruled beside her husband, the emperor. When darkness fell, she walked a far more dangerous road, working in the brothels alongside common prostitutes. Eventually, her hunger for power would push too far. Her destruction would be so swift and brutal that historians still argue whether the stories are even possible or simply the most savage character attack ever written. What you're about to discover will shake everything you thought you knew about power, desire, and ancient Rome's hidden face. Before we step behind those palace doors, join Echoes of History right now, because this story will completely transform how you see the ancient world. If you've ever wondered how much of history is just propaganda, this is your moment. Let us know in the comments what surprises you most. This tale comes from multiple ancient writers. Tacitus, Suetonius, Juvenal, and Pliny the Elder all wrote within decades of these events, when people who witnessed them were still breathing. Modern historians have spent centuries trying to separate truth from political lies. The reality is somehow less shocking and far more interesting than the legends claim. Rome sparkled under the Mediterranean sun. White marble temples gleamed. But inside the imperial palace's dark hallways, shadows gathered thick. Emperor Caligula's rule had become a nightmare. People died every day. Fear poisoned every conversation. To survive meant looking weak, invisible, unimportant. In a forgotten wing of the palace lived Claudius, Caligula's uncle. At 47, everything about him screamed weakness. He stuttered when he spoke. He dragged one leg behind him. Sometimes spit dripped from his mouth mid-sentence. For decades, his family had dismissed him, keeping him far from politics, convinced he was too simple to matter. That belief would save his life. Across the city, in a mansion fit for Rome's oldest families, lived 15-year-old Valeria Messalina. She descended from Augustus's sister. Her bloodline was as noble as Rome could offer. Ancient writers described her striking appearance, dark hair, pale skin, perfect Roman features. But her beauty wasn't what made people notice her. It was the intensity. Her eyes seemed to pierce through people, weighing and judging everyone she met. Among Rome's elite, marriages were business deals, not love stories. When Caligula arranged Messalina's marriage to Claudius, nobody expected anything special. Claudius would never rule. This marriage just kept her close to power, guaranteed imperial children, and solved a minor problem. The girl had no say. At 15, she was told she'd marry a man 30 years older, unappealing in every way. That was final. The wedding night must have been traumatic. Married to a drooling, stammering man she found repulsive. Then, just 3 years later, everything changed. Caligula was murdered by his own guards in 41 CE. Chaos exploded. Who would lead Rome now? Soldiers found Claudius hiding behind a curtain, shaking with terror. Almost as a joke, they declared him emperor. Suddenly, the man everyone dismissed as weak ruled history's greatest empire. And Valeria Messalina, barely 18, became empress. Imagine being Messalina. You're 18 years old. Your husband is emperor, nearly 50, physically unremarkable, apparently uninterested in passion. You command endless wealth, thousands of servants, access to every pleasure Rome offers. 2 children secure your position. What would you do with absolute power and crushing boredom? According to ancient sources, Messalina started sneaking out of the palace after dark. She disguised herself with a blonde wig, wore ordinary clothes, and wandered the streets with just one trusted attendant. Guards noticed, but didn't dare stop her. She was the Empress. Confronting her meant death. Her destination? The Subura, Rome's notorious red light district where prostitutes worked in tiny cells, serving sailors and travelers seeking pleasure. Tacitus and Suetonius report that Messalina worked in a brothel herself, using the name Lysiska, meaning shadow. She paid for the room and offered her services to clients who had no idea she was the Empress. The psychology is staggering. This wasn't forced. This was choice, not financial necessity. She had the empire's wealth. Sometimes she charged money, sometimes she didn't. The reason was something far darker and more complicated than gold. By day, Messalina performed flawlessly. She attended state functions, received foreign dignitaries, managed the palace with perfect efficiency and dignity. Nobody suspected that hours later she'd be in the Subura, servicing clients in a prostitute cell. But secret trips alone couldn't satisfy her anymore. Ancient sources describe increasingly wild palace parties and orgies where senators and their wives performed sexual acts on command, sometimes forced under her supervision. To refuse her invitation meant risking disgrace or worse. Guests arrived nervous, leaving bound to Messalina by shared guilt and unspoken shame. The guest list looked like Rome's power directory: senators seeking favor, generals wanting promotions, merchants chasing profitable contracts. Once someone attended Messalina's parties, she owned them. Opposing her meant exposing their own secret indulgences. It was political control through hedonism, and devastatingly effective. Claudius seemed either unaware or deliberately blind. His freedmen, advisors, former slaves elevated to extraordinary power, watched Messalina carefully, documenting everything, waiting for the perfect moment. Narcissus and Pallas, the empire's most powerful men after Claudius, understood that Messalina's influence threatened Rome's stability. But moving against an empress required perfect timing and undeniable proof. Then came the event that would immortalize Messalina's name for 2,000 years. Pliny the Elder, writing just decades after her death, records it plainly. Messalina challenged Scylla, Rome's most famous prostitute, to see who could satisfy the most men in one day. Picture it. 2 women, one the empress in disguise, the other a professional sex worker, engaged in what might be history's strangest contest. Sources disagree on exact numbers. Some claim 25 men, others suggest more. But all agree on one thing. Messalina won, continuing long after Scylla admitted defeat. The physical reality is almost impossible to comprehend. 25 men in 24 hours means a new partner roughly every hour, with no breaks for food, rest, or recovery. From a modern medical perspective, such exertion would be devastating. Did it happen exactly as described? Historians remain skeptical, but the story appears across independent sources, suggesting Romans believed their empress had done something extraordinarily scandalous, publicly competing with prostitutes in sexual excess. What drives such behavior? Modern psychology might point to hypersexuality disorder, intrusive sexual thoughts escalating despite consequences, normal satisfaction impossible, behavior spiraling beyond control. Ancient accounts of Messalina fit this pattern perfectly: insatiable, escalating, uncontrollable. Roman medicine had no understanding of psychological conditions, blaming excessive female desire on hysteria, supposedly caused by a wandering womb. Remedies were limited to herbs or diet, completely missing the real issue. Messalina was trapped in cycles of behavior she may not have understood or controlled, in a society offering neither treatment nor empathy. Back at the palace, her actions became impossible to hide. Rumors spread across Rome's streets. Ordinary people gossiped about sightings in the Subura. Senators whispered about her parties. The scandal grew, yet Claudius remained isolated, seemingly oblivious. Narcissus and Pallas watched, waiting for their moment. Messalina had created countless enemies through executions, ruined rivals, and public humiliations. Each waited for their chance to strike. Then, in 48 CE, she made a decision that sealed her fate. Messalina fell in love, not with her emperor husband, not with the anonymous clients of her nighttime escapades, but with Gaius Silius, said to be the most handsome man in Rome, a senator, wealthy, charming, politically ambitious. Their affair was known, but what happened next defies reason. While Claudius was away at the port of Ostia overseeing grain shipments, Messalina married Silius publicly. A full Roman wedding, witnesses, contracts, bridal clothing, religious rites, hundreds of guests. Tacitus describes the celebration in her gardens, with senators and aristocrats present, music playing, feasting underway. Her motivation? Ancient sources suggest two possibilities. Either years of unchecked behavior had disconnected her from reality, or she was attempting a coup, planning to replace Claudius with Silius as emperor. Either scenario requires understanding that Messalina's judgment had become dangerously impaired. Imagine being a guest at this wedding. Attend and you witness possible treason. Refuse and risk angering the Empress, whose reputation for revenge was legendary. Many attended, either hoping the coup would succeed or too terrified to decline. The ceremony continued. Music, wine, ritualized proceedings, theatrical displays of intimacy. Some sources claim the marriage was consummated publicly. This wasn't subtle political maneuvering. It was audacious, bordering on insanity. Reports eventually reached Claudius in Ostia. His freedmen presented evidence that seemed impossible. His wife had married another man in a ceremony attended by half the Senate. Claudius refused to believe it at first, requiring multiple witnesses, and signed documents before reality sank in. Narcissus recognized the moment. Messalina had given them perfect grounds to act. A counter-coup was launched. Narcissus seized control of the Praetorian Guard, marching toward Rome. Meanwhile, Messalina continued celebrating, unaware or indifferent to approaching disaster. Her celebration ended abruptly when messengers brought word. Claudius was returning, fully aware of her actions. Sobered instantly, she grasped the consequences. Execution awaited her, Silius, and everyone connected to the wedding. In desperation, she attempted one final manipulation. Gathering her children, Britannicus and Octavia, she tried to meet Claudius, hoping their presence would soften his anger. But Narcissus intercepted her, warning that her beauty and tears would undo Claudius's resolve. He physically prevented the meeting. Silius faced execution first. No resistance, no pleas, only a request for swift death, which he received that same day. Guests from the wedding were hunted down, some executed immediately, others forced to commit suicide to avoid imperial punishment. The purge swept through Rome's elite, erasing anyone connected to Messalina's final act. Messalina retreated to the gardens of Lucullus, an estate she'd seized years earlier through accusations and execution. Ironically, the estate she'd claimed would become her final prison. With her was her mother Lepida, largely absent for most of Messalina's life, now present at the end. Ancient accounts describe the young empress's mental state as volatile, swinging between rage and despair, panic and eerie calm. She tried to write a plea to Claudius, but couldn't find words. She considered ending her own life, but courage failed her. Narcissus wouldn't leave her fate to Claudius. He knew the emperor might be swayed by her tears, might grant mercy if he saw her weeping with their children. So he sent a tribune and centurion with strict instructions. Kill her immediately. They found Messalina with her mother, a dagger trembling in her hand. The tribune hesitated, offering her the chance to end her own life and preserve some dignity. She couldn't. Even facing certain death, courage deserted her. Lepida urged her daughter to act, to take her life, rather than be executed like any common criminal. Messalina froze, caught between pride and terror. Finally, the tribune's patience ran out. He stepped forward and delivered the fatal blow. Messalina died at 22 in the garden she'd seized years earlier, killed by the same imperial machinery she once controlled. Lepida remained, performing one final act of maternal love, arranging her daughter's body, closing her eyes, restoring what little dignity death allowed. Claudius was dining when news arrived. According to Suetonius, he showed no emotion, neither grief nor satisfaction. He continued his meal, called for more wine, as if nothing remarkable had occurred. 2,000 years later, historians still debate what truly happened. Ancient sources are deeply biased. Most were moralists or satirists, exaggerating for effect rather than accuracy. Modern historians believe Messalina did engage in scandalous sexual behavior, but specific details may have been exaggerated or entirely invented. Why the exaggeration? After her death, Claudius married Agrippina the Younger, Nero's mother, who sought to control historical narratives. Portraying Messalina as monstrous made Agrippina appear virtuous by contrast. Feminist historians ask why Messalina's sexual behavior became legendary while male emperors committed comparable or worse acts with little censure. Caligula allegedly engaged in incest and rape. Nero forced senators to witness sexual assaults. Yet Messalina's reputation surpasses them all. Why? Because female sexual agency terrified Romans more than male sexual violence. What does her story teach us? At its core, it's about how women's sexuality has been policed, punished, and weaponized. Messalina left no writings. We have no record of her perspective, only accounts by her enemies. Think about what she truly had: an arranged marriage at 15 to a man she found repulsive, nominal power despite the Empress title, and a society that left women almost no outlets for ambition or desire. So a girl married at 15 produced 7 years of scandal, a public bigamous wedding, and execution at 22. Whether she truly slept with 25 men in one night remains uncertain. What we know, her name became synonymous with female sexual excess for 2 millennia. Roman sources turned her into a monster to frighten women into obedience. If this story made you question what you thought you knew about history, join Echoes of History. We uncover uncomfortable truths that textbooks leave out. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because next we'll examine Agrippina the Younger, the woman who married her uncle, allegedly seduced her son, and rose to power through methods that make Messalina seem almost tame. Tell us in the comments what shocks you most: the 25 men contest, the public wedding, or the uncertainty of fact versus character assassination. Until next time, remember, history's darkest secrets aren't always what actually happened. Sometimes they're what people wanted you to believe.